You work your whole life and earn and earn and earn. Have you ever wondered what happens to your assets after you die? Well, there's a whole set of laws that handle this, and there's a whole lot of documents that you can do to control it. I know you control your stuff while you're alive. Why not control it after you die? Today, we're going to dive into estate planning. We're going to keep it basic to give a broad overview, but we'll go into every single thing, why people do it, and what happens if you don't.
Welcome to Gavels Down, Voices Up, where we flip the script on conventional legal discussions. I'm Rachel King, here to guide you through the murky waters of family law, estate conflicts, inheritance disputes, all of the dramas. We're not just talking about law, we're talking about how it affects your life, your rights, your future, and your money. From the courtroom to your living room, we bring you insights that matter. Dive into each episode ready to challenge, learn, and grow. Ready to change the dialogue? Let's begin. Gavels down, voices up.
Here's the truth. When you die, it is going to be a huge shocker on your entire family. Whether you're married, have children, whether you're in your early 20s or you live to 117, every single time somebody passes away, it impacts the rest of their friends and family, maybe even the rest of the world. So what can you do to reduce that stress and potentially allow your family, your friends, and the world to have the time to grieve and mourn correctly? Well, that's kind of when estate planning comes in. So what is estate planning? Estate planning is an opportunity for you to control what happens to your stuff after you pass away. And maybe you think, I don't really care, I'm going to be dead. Okay, fair. But if you have an opportunity to, again, reduce your stress of your loved ones, wouldn't that be reason enough? All right, you don't want to do that either. Well, how about preventing the government from taking your things or unnecessary taxes? If you're still at a no, I don't know what to tell you. Then I guess we have the California Probate Code that will come in and will handle all of your things. And really, that's what happens if you don't estate plan. If you don't take the time to properly estate plan, oh well, we've got a whole code. In fact, every state has one that directs what's going to happen, who's going to be in charge, and how it's all handled after you die. If you have no friends or family that is going to step up and do it, there's even government agencies that will come in and act as your personal representative to handle your life and wrap it all up in a nice little package, including filing your final tax return that checks the box telling the IRS that your social security number is no more. Because yeah, believe it or not, that actually has to be done too. So one of the big misconceptions is that estate planning is only for the super, super wealthy, or maybe people that have children or don't want any of their family to inherit. And yes, it can actually work for that, but estate planning is for every single person. Whether you own a lot of assets, you have minor children that you want to care for, you want to leave to charity, or maybe you just want to make sure that whoever is taking care of you isn't pulling the plug too early. All of that is done in an estate plan. You estate plan while you're alive. Obviously, after you croak, you can't go in and sign any documents, but while you're alive and well and have mental capacity, then you are perfectly capable and probably should at least look into estate planning. I once had a client that came in, we went through the whole entire estate planning process, talked in depth about what it was, why to do it, the benefits, the drawbacks, and what happens if you don't. And at the end of that meeting, my client looked at me and said, you know what? I just don't really want to do this. I'm going to leave this to after I die. They can all just sort it out on their own. And I thought, well, okay, fair enough. And at least you're making an educated decision. So hopefully at the end of this, you'll have a little bit more tools in your toolbox to figure out how you want to handle this if you do it all. So typically in an estate plan, we are looking at a will, a trust, a power of attorney, an advanced healthcare directive, and some other documents that can go in place to, again, make sure that what you want to happen actually happens. There are times where what you want to have happen actually is what the law would say anyway, and that's great. And then so maybe you are using an estate plan for other reasons, like to keep it out of probate court. For example, in California, if you own a house pretty much anywhere in the state and you don't have a trust, your family is going to end up in probate court because houses are just really expensive in California, and we have a money threshold as to what can pass outside of probate court and what requires probate court. And no, your will, it's not going to keep your family out of probate court. So let's get into these documents and how they work, what they are. We'll take a step back and talk about the probate code. Again, in California, we have the California Probate Code, but every single state has their own version of it. And this is a set of laws that we've put in place that say when somebody dies or becomes incapacitated, here's what happens. Here's who can be in charge. Let's start with spouse. Then we go to children. If there's no children, we just keep going down the bloodline. Who's going to inherit? Is it going to be spouse? Is it going to be children? Is it going to be new spouse and old children? Is it going to be grandchildren? We look at the laws to say who is going to inherit. And so if you do nothing and you die, we completely rely on the laws. So then you can do a will. Maybe you've heard of it, a last will and testament, right? There's a lot of different ways of how these can be created. They can be done very formally with an attorney. Or like the movies say, you can scratch it out on a cocktail napkin, date and sign it, and that might even work. In any event, a will is a document that takes power after somebody dies, and it is the directions of who they want to be in charge and who is going to inherit. I want my long lost nephew to be my executor, and I want him to collect all of my assets and give them across the United States to all of those in need. Okay, that would be my directions. But this will, this set of directions, consider it like a recipe. It requires the court to come in and say, okay, here is the recipe. We want great long lost nephew to be in charge. So the court is going to have great long lost nephew be in charge, assuming long lost nephew wants to actually do it. If not, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. And then the court's going to look at the will and say, oh, okay, and here's all of the assets and here is what is going to happen to them. And the court is going through making sure that this recipe, this will is complied with. So you're going to be in probate court. If you live in California, you probably heard disastrous stories about probate court and how long it can take. And yeah, that's true. Our system is a little bit impacted and it can take at least a year. Sometimes probates I've had have taken 2 or 3 years, depending on the size of the estate and the complexity of the assets. Some assets that seem fairly simple are a little bit more complex, like a piece of very unique real estate or vacant land. It can take a long time to sort that out. Or maybe they forgot to do probate like 3 generations ago and we're having to fix that. In any event, probate in California is not fast. So you're thinking, all right, I'm going to be dead, so I don't care. True story. But it can also be really expensive in California. So let's say we want to get rid of the time delays and cut back on the costs. Well, at least in California, we've got something called a trust. I believe every state has a trust, but the purpose of them in other states might vary. For example, I hear, though I don't practice in Nevada, then the Nevada probate system is a lot faster. So maybe you don't need a trust to keep you out of the court system because maybe there is not really significant delays in the court system. I don't know. I'm just saying. So a trust, you create it while you're alive and you give all of the same directions and recipes that you gave in the will, except that you add assets to the trust right now. So I'm alive, I'm well, I've got capacity. I'm going to say, I want that long lost nephew to come in, take care of my assets, distribute them to all of the needy across the United States. But this time I do it in a trust. And then I take all of my assets and I actually add them into the trust. Consider the trust like a bucket. Okay, so now we've got my long lost nephew who can sign. We've got all of the assets that are owned by the trust. And so we don't need the court to come in and to follow that recipe book. At that point, we just need the trustee, long lost nephew, to step up and follow the recipe book himself. Maybe an attorney is helpful, but again, another story for another day. So a trust can keep you out of probate court. That can be huge. Another thing that a trust does that is different than a will is it allows you to control assets even longer. So you want your child to inherit, but maybe your child's making some iffy decisions and you're like, I don't know. Maybe they're in jail. Maybe they're a drug addict. Maybe you have a great child, but you say, I don't want them to inherit just yet. Okay, all of that You can control in a trust. You can say, I want my child to inherit, but I want them to have passed a drug test and gone through rehab, and I only want them to have $200 a month, but if they're going to buy a house, they can have more. You can put all of the rules that you want in a trust. They're also helpful in yours, mine, and ours families, or in marriages that happen late in life. I call them the second act marriages, where yes, you want your spouse to have your assets to be able to support them through their life, but you don't want your children disinherited. Any of those controls, a trust can be very, very helpful. They're also confidential, which is why you hear a lot of celebrities that have maybe long lost children or have extramarital affairs, or who knows why they're actually doing them, put their money into a trust because it's confidential, it's not public. But remember, a will, it's a recipe card for the court, and court is open to the public, constitutional right. So all of your nonsense is going to be put before the court. Those are the main documents for after you die. But actually in estate planning, we look at some different steps too. Like I said, power of attorney, advanced healthcare directive, maybe a living will. What are those? I call those the living documents, and they handle what is going to happen to you if you can't make your own decisions. And arguably, these are even more important than the death documents like a will and a trust. Why? Well, because you're still alive. So maybe you don't want all your money given to the needy across America while you're still alive. You're like, no, could you please make sure that I've got my own food and I've got the health care that I need and the nurses and the roof over my head and all of the things. Everything that you need while you're alive, but unable to take care of yourself, that's what these living documents do.
Let's take a quick break. If you're navigating the twists and turns of divorce, you might be wondering, getting divorced, now what? That's actually the title of my upcoming book, designed to guide you through the challenging and emotional process of divorce. It's packed with real-life stories, expert tips, and motivational insights to empower you every step of the way. While it's not available just yet, you can join the waitlist to make sure you don't miss out. Head over to RachelKingAttorney.com to sign up to be the first to get a copy and enter to win a free signed copy as soon as it releases. Arm yourself with the knowledge to move forward confidently through this challenging time. Now let's get back to the show.
So power of attorney. Typically we do a durable power of attorney. That's one that continues in or continues to be valid through incapacity. That's totally different than maybe a standard general power of attorney that you did in the military. When I was in the military, we had to do powers of attorney, but they terminated as soon as we became incapacitated, right? Because we used them for different things. In estate planning, it's typically a durable power of attorney. Why? Because right now, as I sit here today, I can make all of my own decisions. Maybe I need help if I'm in my 70s and I think I don't really want to go to the bank. I want somebody else to go to the bank for me. So even if I have my power of attorney effective now, the big kicker is that if I get dementia or I have a stroke or some other medical issue that makes it so that I can't make my own decisions, I still want my power of attorney to be powerful and allow somebody else to step in. That's the durable part. And a power of attorney, I like to say, think of it as your financial and your everyday decisions, right? So can the loan be taken out for the car? Can the house be sold? Can banks be opened, bank accounts, credit cards, all of that? That is your durable power of attorney. And you want somebody that you trust to make decisions the way you would make them to be in charge of you. That's the power of attorney. That's why we use them typically. Advanced healthcare directive, same kind of idea. While we're alive, but maybe as the name suggests, it handles medical decisions. Also super important because you're still alive. So if I have dementia and I can't make medical decisions for myself, but I get a really bad rash on my leg, I want somebody to go in and get the rash treated. If I have a stroke and I can't eat, maybe I want somebody to make sure that I have a feeding tube. Or maybe I get into a car accident and I lose a ton of blood and I need a blood transfusion, but my religion says absolutely not. And so I don't want the blood transfusion. I want to go in forth pursuant to my religious beliefs. All of that is handled through your advanced healthcare directive. Again, giving somebody else the power to make medical decisions about you while you're alive. Advanced healthcare directives can go on a little bit farther back, like for autopsy purposes. Obviously, you're dead, but the person that's in charge can order autopsy. It can handle things like that. Those are your living documents. You might add in a living will. You might add in a post. Those are documents that kind of say end of life directions. If I have dementia, I don't want life-saving procedures. If I flatline and the likelihood of bringing me back is going to result in a vegetative state, like don't do it. Those directions to doctors, those are also part of living documents. And just like the power of attorney, just like the advanced healthcare directive, you want to make sure that whoever you put in charge and name is going to make decisions how you would make them. And that's really different from making good decisions, right? Lots of people can make good decisions, but it's your life. And so not only do you want somebody who's going to make good decisions, you also want somebody who's going to respect your wishes, know what your wishes are, and make decisions the way you would. So you make estate planning documents and you do this estate plan while you are alive and well. And sometimes it gets iffy. If you are diagnosed with dementia, but you haven't lost capacity, can you do your own estate plan? Maybe. That's where getting a really good attorney and some doctors involved can be very helpful, not only to make sure that the estate plan is done correctly, but that it also is legally enforceable. Sometimes maybe you don't have that and you're like, I'm totally fine today. I have no medical issues. I'm just going to download some LegalZoom or some documents online. That might be the way to go. DIY estate planning is on the rise. But pop on over to one of my future videos. Subscribe here so you're notified, and I'll talk all about how DIYing estate planning can work, or maybe the pitfalls. So again, you can decide, is this something that you want to do yourself, or do you want to invest in an attorney? I do think now is an appropriate time to remind you what attorneys do. As an attorney, we are able to give legal advice. So you just heard a whole bunch of information about estate planning and how it works, what it does, but it's very general and it applies the same pretty much to everybody. So you're like, okay, I'll use this LegalZoom service, or I'll go to a paralegal. Maybe I'll do a hybrid option where I will have somebody else draft it, but they're not an attorney. Attorneys are the only people that are allowed to give legal advice. And legal advice in estate planning can be key, because legal advice is where we take this general information that we just heard and we pair it with your specific information. So now you have 3 minor children. You don't get along with their other parent because you guys are divorced, and you're trying to figure out how to make sure your kids are taken care of, but not give all of that money to the control of other parent. How do you do that? That's unique to you, and how the estate plan is written and how the law applies and what tools are available are unique to your specific situation. And the only person that can do that for you and tell you your options is an attorney. So you want to be aware of some of this as you go through whether you are going to estate plan. Estate planning is a great idea. I've had many clients over the years who have come in and had horrific family situations. And I don't mean like everybody's fighting. I just mean they're really blended, and stepkids don't get along with stepmom. Stepdad is having an affair with mistress, and all of these people need some money. And how are we going to handle it? Well, I can tell you, if you don't have an estate plan, it is going to wind up in court. In fact, I once heard about an estate where there was a will and it included the mistress, but there was also wife and kids on the side that were like, whoa, guess how they found out about the mistress? Yeah, absolutely. When they got notice about the mistress filing for probate. Talk about a long, multi-year process that cost, I would bet, at least $100,000 on each side of that equation, or the V. Now, could it have been avoided if we did an estate plan? Who really knows? What an estate plan doesn't do is it doesn't guarantee that you're going to stay out of court. Maybe that mistress would have still inherited under the trust, and maybe the wife and the kids would have all contested it. Who knows what would have happened? However, what we know for sure is that had the estate plan been done a little bit more carefully, with a little bit more consideration, maybe we would have had an opportunity to die down the legal proceedings, keeping them either completely out of court or saving probably hundreds of thousands of dollars on a highly contested case. Estate planning is your opportunity to take your wishes and make sure that everybody knows them, so that after you die or if you become capacitated, what you want still happens. Why? Because you matter, and it's all your stuff. And even though you're going to be dead, it's still your decision. So much like we tell everybody to go out to the polls and vote, you should take your opportunity to exercise these rights and at least know about your estate plan. Go and talk to an attorney. Figure out what your life looks like based on what you think should happen, what your plans are, and see if you still want to move forward with an estate plan. The bottom line is that whether you do an estate plan or you don't do an estate plan, you're going to die. And after you die, everything that you've done during your life has to be wrapped up, boxed, and put away. Social Security number no longer in use, debts handled, assets distributed, whatever it's going to be. Are they going to go to the state of California general fund? Are they going to go to your grandchildren? Are you going to donate it to an animal charity to take care of cats and dogs forever? It's your decision, so make it. The one thing that I want you to know, though, is that estate planning is not for the rich. It's not for the famous. It's not for all of the things. It is for you. And it is to make sure that what you want happens and that your family has the opportunity to grieve you without having to sort through all of the legal mumbo jumbo that often happens after somebody dies. If you've been involved in a highly contested probate that could have maybe been resolved if an estate plan had been done, or if you've done an estate plan that really turned out to save the day, I would be interested in hearing what you have to say. Go ahead and like, subscribe, follow, and tell your story.
That wraps up another episode of Gavels Down, Voices Up. If you found value in our discussion today, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs these insights. Your engagement helps us grow and impact more lives. I'm Rachel King, thanking you for listening and reminding you to speak up, because every voice deserves to be heard.